And I'm going to go live now and everywhere else. All right. Hey guys, this is, oh my goodness, Bob Goodman, you're here. Hello, hello. All right, this is day 4 of my 30-day live. And I'm excited to talk about today's topic, which is around how to quit your job. And this is an open topic, obviously, and I want to encourage people who are listening, watching right now to chime in, both including your questions, as well as some of the things that maybe you have tried before that did work or didn't work. Yesterday, I witnessed something really interesting as I was going live with Adam from fullstackdeveloper.com, that I saw people started commenting on each other's questions, which I absolutely love. So if you have any questions about quitting your job, things you've tried, please let me know. Leave me a comment in the chat window. Also, if you're new to 30-Day Live, welcome. This is a series where I basically design and develop to have a casual conversation, trying to normalize the conversation for content creators and content entrepreneurs. And this is part of the conversation to talk openly about what do we do when we realize that our current role job is limiting? How do you go? People always say this. How do you go from basically part-time to, I just realized I didn't have my mic on. Sorry about that. How do you go from full-time to then working full-time, working for a corporate in a corporate environment, to then doing this full-time as a content creator? That leap is not going to be that trivial. So to me, what has worked really well is to actually leaving my full-time job, for instance, at the end of 2015 with a plan, which we're going to go into in a second here, which is how do you line up, understand taxes, understand your health insurance, and finances. To have, for me, I was comfortable with a year worth of living expenses. For some people, or some popular article, it always says, oh, you only need to be having 6 months worth of saving. But sometimes it's just, that's not enough. It really depends on your current situation. That means, do you have a spouse? Do you have a partner? Are you single? Do you have children? So I really want to normalize this conversation. So let's talk about what we're going to cover, which is the before, during, and after you leave your full-time job. And so first is before. One thing that I think is really essential is to begin experimenting and finding out who you are, what you're good at prior to leaving your job. As most people say, never leave your job never go out without a plan, right? And so for some of you guys, it may mean to change your job to something different, to something that's a little less demanding, so that you'll have time and the capacity to really pursue your creative endeavors. And for some of you, it may mean, like for me, for instance, like it was hard to find another full-time job that allowed me to do what I want and needed, right? For me, freelancing was so much more forgiving and really flexible, so that I can choose more or less my work schedule, work half time. So I want to share that with you guys. Thank you, Sam. Which is that after leaving my full-time job at Arnold at the end of 2015, I basically landed my next gig, freelance gig, within a month. I was quite surprised. And within that first year, I was able to replace my income by about 70%. And that was, it was just wonderful, frankly. I never saw it coming, because I was able to drive to Watertown, which was not far from where I was living. The commute was significantly cut down from 1 hour to 15 minutes on the road. And then guess what? I have the flexibility to add and to subtract. I can basically start working with another freelance client if I choose to. And here's the thing. Gradually, I was able to really attract and be able to build relationships with individuals as well, like individual creators, small to medium-sized companies. And that was really my sweet spot. So that was the before, and really start building that relationship and start to understand what the options are. And I want to just say briefly about the issue with the mindset. I was earlier listening to some podcasts trying to give me some ideas in terms of, what are some of the things that other people have learned and summarized over the years. I was listening to, surprisingly, there's one called NPR Live Tools podcast. And one thing they mentioned is that even though like a lot of us leaving full-time jobs might hold some grudges, and you're built in, you have the desire to really say, I'm finally gone and now I'm better off. But it's important to kind of hold that emotions and hold that space for yourself and leave on a good note, on good terms, because those relationships might be something that you can nurture and develop from later on. So it's very important. So I want to talk about, after you leave your job, it's important to know that, again, we'll talk about finances, health insurance in a second. And actually, I have the sessions tomorrow and the day after to really dive into some details about health insurance. There are a lot of the things that we have not been taught how to do. I'm going through that moment right now. As you know, I bought a new home a year ago, and we have been renovating the basement, but just not just the basement, it's everything in a big house can break, and things that you've never learned how to do, as easy as changing a leaking faucet, for instance. Like, I look back to my younger years to say, why did I spend 7 8 years learning chemistry and biology and calculus? Like, I don't know how to change a faucet. Now I have to watch a YouTube video. It actually feels very much the same when you are working as a freelancer at the beginning. You will realize that, what, these are new skills I need to acquire. How do I sign up? Where do I sign up for health insurance? Do I have to rely on Cobra from my previous employer, which is a good option at the beginning, but very quickly you'll realize it's quite expensive, actually. And what are some of the things? Where do I invest my money? How do I transfer these rollover or 401k from one company to another? But please just take a deep breath, because all these skills are learnable. And that's precisely why I want to have these conversations. It may feel a little awkward to some people, but I truly believe that it's an opportunity for us to really normalize this whole thing. All right. We can ask each other questions, ask me questions. So let's jump in and talk about the elephant in the room. When I started freelancing, I soon became somehow the expert. Clearly, I wasn't. People said, Faya, where did you get health insurance? My parents don't live in this, didn't live in the country at the time. My mom is someone that who's living with me right now, but I don't have anybody to really go to. So out of all places, I live in Massachusetts, where this is a very friendly place for you to find a lot of solutions. But if you live elsewhere in the US, you want to go to healthcare.gov. And from there, you select your state, and then you're presented with a lot of these options. So one thing that people don't realize is that there's something called, I believe it's called like a special event. So as you're laid off, where you left your job, or, including if you have a newborn, you recently got divorced, lost your insurance, there's something called open enrollment, which means you can actually apply for health insurance based on your current income. I want to say that upfront, because so many people just don't think that this is even possible. As a freelancer, and when you become a content creator, there are two things that might be beneficial to you. Number one, that your income at the beginning is very unpredictable. So, for instance, you're trying to replace your full-time income with something that's brand new. And you can honestly tell Mass Health Connector, in this case, about you used to making, let's say, $100,000 a year. And maybe your first year may just be $30,000 to $40,000 after expenses. And that is understandable. So from there, guess what? There's something called a federal poverty level, and please don't take that as as an embarrassment. It's actually a system that's designed to help you at the beginning. When you start off on your own, when you leave your job, turns out there are a lot of expenses that you just don't know how to even anticipate, right? All of a sudden, your email, maybe you start with a Gmail that's free. Maybe later on you need something like Superhuman that you have to pay for. You might be building a website, and all these expenses is something that is deductible. So, oh my goodness, what's up, Lauren? So good to have you here. I love going live. And I worked with Lauren actually at Arnold, and just so wonderful to be able to connect with so many people. And that's something I also want to say, that's important to keep in touch with your colleagues, especially the ones that you really develop a relationship with. Maybe you had lunch together, maybe you worked on the same team or different teams. In fact, there's an exercise. No matter when you're watching this, if you're watching this right now, I would encourage you to please send 2 to 3 text messages to your dormant ties, dormant connections, which means people that you know, but you just haven't connected with for a little while. So pull out your phone, just send a message like, happy holidays, wondering what you've been up to, how you're doing. And send 3 messages. I guarantee you, at the end of the hour, I won't be live for the entire hour, but you're going to actually hear back from some of them. And I stole this idea, for instance, from Pat Flynn from the Smart Passive Income, as well as Jordan Harbinger from the host of the Jordan Harbinger show. So they did this at a much bigger conference. They made everybody to, unmute their phones and basically sent out these 2 to 3 messages. And within 10 minutes, the whole conference room, just getting here all the pings back. And it was very telling that we should try to connect with the folks that we've been colleagues with, friends with, even mentors and bosses. So all right, let's see. I don't see any questions yet, but again, if you're watching this at a later time, just let me know, whatever it may be. And I would love to answer your questions about how to quit your job, all the fears that you may be having. And I know that this is a sensitive topic. So today, I am actually not going to shout out your name, especially if you're coming in from LinkedIn, for instance. I think we need to have these honest conversations. What I also find is maybe not very helpful about certain type of, clickbaits or influencers we tend to follow, who makes this whole taking the leap seem really trivial, easy. You have to be brave. You should follow your passion. Money will follow. I think a lot of this type of advice isn't very helpful, as well as, if you're developing an online course, you're creating something on the side just to see if it works. You're twiddling your thumbs and you're feeling pretty nervous. Like, I probably shouldn't leave my full-time job. What if this thing doesn't work? Well, most people do not launch their products or online courses with multi-six-figure sales within the first week or first month. I know we've all heard those stories and think that should be the standard. If we're not there, we don't deserve to try something different or try something on our own. The reality is a lot different. It is a slow burn. That's what freelance and content entrepreneurship really is about. And a lot of people quit way too early before they can see the returns and the results. So I would say that it's really interesting. I love reflecting on my own journey, like trying to storify it, but in a very transparent and honest way. After I left my full-time job in 2015, and I remember I got this lovely book from a colleague of mine, and it says, imagine all the places you will go. And I was really excited about that. And surely within the year, I was able to, follow my own passion as a podcaster. I traveled all over the US and parts in Canada and Montreal. I was able to, go to a lot of the Cirque du Soleil, Seven Finger shows, to meet the people I actually once interviewed on my show, to actually sit down with these people and meet them in person. Prior to that, as a full-time person, I remember I have to be so careful about when I record my podcasts, when I start to create. And I just didn't really have that freedom, and not until I became a freelancer. So I have one question here. Thank you so much for this. I'm a filmmaker with a completed film looking for distribution and wonder if you could help me. So I understand this question came through because I released several videos on YouTube trying to demystify this process. If you're a content creator as a filmmaker, you make videos, but film in general, how do you go about this? So the rules are changing all the time. I will express what I have learned, in particular towards filmmakers, whether you're, feature filmmaker or you're a documentary filmmaker, is that I would try to retain as much control as possible and trying to be resourceful. Right now, if you Google, there are a ton of resources like independent films, and there are a lot of resources. Maybe we can take it offline. I can send some of the links to you. There are a lot of several consulting firms run by trustworthy people, who are trying to teach us a thing or two, kind of compare different routes. My go-to, simply for my film called Face World Documentary, I went through the route with Amazon Prime at the end of 2019. And then at the same time, I distributed my film on Film Hub. And what I liked about both is the fact that, with Amazon Prime, I was able to basically, directly connect with the people who are working. They actually responded to their customer service questions. And I remember that the process wasn't trivial because they too require you to have, all sorts of like visual assets and different dimensions. And it was just a lot of slicing and dicing. And they had very strict rules around how big your film, like the quality of your films, for instance. So I remember that was such a process, but it was done and I actually do enjoy it. And Film Hub has this, at the time, it's called the 80-20% split, which means you keep 80% of the revenue and they keep 20%. And also, according to Film Hub, they help you distribute to, what I could see at the time, like over 30 different platforms. Many of them I didn't even recognize, and many of them are worldwide. So with Film Hub, by the way, for this filmmaker who asked the question, you're able to not only distribute to Amazon in US and UK, so that's one area, one domain, you're also able to distribute to Amazon RLW, rest of world. With all that said, again, this whole theme is about retaining our content and be very smart about it. I, at the beginning, try to work with a distributor. They're no longer in business. And I was very lucky because that happened before I was distributing my film with them. And I was able to get all my money back. I put everything on a credit card, which was very, very important when you pay for like a large lump sum of money. Make sure you have a good credit card and make sure that you understand what you're signing up for. And yeah, I could certainly follow up with you, no problem. And but in general, I think it's hard to make money through your films. I actually read there are a lot of data on that, for instance, about like how many millions of views, like 3 to 8 million views ish from Amazon Prime, is it will help you make minimum wage. So I always and constantly urge everybody as they quit their job, once again, to begin not developing only a single source of income, but multiple sources of income. And what I mean by that is not necessarily working multiple jobs in the traditional sense, or necessarily having all your income to be freelance opportunities. Obviously, that can be a good one, actually, right? Instead of having one freelance client, now you have three. If one leaves, one project dies down, you still have the other two. For me, I want to share a personal story, which is I developed this interest of trying to make money on eBay as well. I said, well, how hard could it be? I really want to learn how the system works. So I trained myself before I hit the perfect storm. I train myself. I love fashion. I really like things that kind of like very kind of bizarre and different, one of a kind. And because I lived in Newton at the time, I remember I used to go to the TJ Maxx, Marshalls, and consignment stores at the time just to train myself, be financially more savvy and comfortable about developing additional revenue streams. So I would find these pieces that are sold at a deeper discount at these stores. And guess what? I listed them on eBay, and a lot of them are not only shipped to the US, but Europe, like Italy in particular. And then I hit the perfect storm. At the time, also, I believe it was actually late 2015, City Sports in Boston, they went bankrupt. And it's actually a store and brand we actually quite adore here in the Boston area. And I remember that day I told myself not to go into the store because I shouldn't just buy things because they're cheap and they're on sale. But I decided to go in and I realized the entire store inventory at that particular store in downtown Crossing was 70, 80, very quickly 90% off. So a pair of Nike sneakers were $30, $20. And I found 80 pairs of Birkenstocks for $10 a pair. And I was the only person in the store who was purchasing them. And I remember coming home and I had to order an Uber XL that day, and it was completely packed. I remember coming home, looking at my bedroom and thinking they better sell because I do not want to hold on to them. At that time I remember was November, but by the time was the month before Christmas, which is the time we're in right now, I sold the entire quote unquote inventory from my bedroom. And it was 80 pairs of Birkenstocks at $10 income. I sold them for $80 a pair plus shipping. And there are a lot of things of different sizes. They went out, and that within 2 to 3 weeks, I actually made close to $20,000, if not more, over time. So that's something I definitely want to encourage everyone to just exercise. There are things I learned from my guests from Phase World that it was very revealing. One, I remember Josh Green said, not everything has to work. we force ourselves to believe that like whatever we put our effort in, it has to have the, reasonable return. If I do this, it has to replace a significant chunk of my full-time income. I have to make twice as much money as I once did within 6 months period. That is just not reasonable. Like imagine if you're your own boss. I mean, would you give an employee a rule like that, knowing that it's not feasible? So that's something I definitely want to mention. And when it comes to money or roles or what you're doing, there's something else I learned from Julia Holloway, who said, you know, lateral movement is an option. Maybe when you become a freelancer, or maybe when you're creating content now on your own for different clients, maybe small to medium sized clients, it's okay. Like title at that point doesn't really matter. So make sure you don't hold yourselves just based on, how many clients, how much money I'm making, but are you really learning from the experience? So those are some of the advice. I'm going to go through my notes to see if you're here, drop me a note, drop me a question. Let me know if you find any of this is helpful. And yeah, so I think I covered quite a bit here. Um, to summarize, and I'll quickly touch base on taxes before we get into the more details later on. I mentioned finances. Don't just believe in online. Somebody says 6 months. If you are more comfortable, like me, with 1 year worth of saving before you take the leap, do it. Have money saved up. And for a ton of reasons, frankly, because you don't want to be feeling or sounding or looking desperate. People can smell that from across the room, and it doesn't help you to choose the right opportunity to sign up for. By leaving your job takes courage, and the last thing you want to do is to rush yourself into something that's not right for you. So, Yana, I'm so glad this is helpful. I appreciate your feedback. And quickly on health insurance, your employer is responsible to give you Cobra, which is an extension, which is the same health insurance. Now you have to pay out of pocket compared to what you once had. So now, that's almost always more expensive. Remember that you can look into healthcare.gov, start with your state if you live in the United States, and see where you might fall under. And it's okay to get some government support. It's called marketplace health insurance. So you can get support. You can look into it right now. Since COVID in 2020, open enrollment is year round. You can call them if you have any questions. Don't overestimate your income. Don't assume that year one, you're going to replace all of your income, sometimes not even half of your income. And that's when you can save significantly on health insurance and get help. Lastly, I will say before I conclude today is on taxes. There's a lot of tax advantages that you can take. And I want to break down in some details and in a future day live stream. But what I've benefited significantly is now whatever money I end up making, if I make 100K this year, that's not all I'm going to report. Yeah, it's going to show up as a number, as 100K income, but I'm going to have a ton of deductions. Owning a home, for instance, you will have your mortgage and really your mortgage as well as real estate taxes. Those are deductibles on your income taxes. Also, every single upgrade, your phone, your ring light, the new camera lenses, new computer, memory cards, even pens and paper and printer, all the things you need for your home office. You might think some of the expenses are trivial. It's not, right? They really add up. As I mentioned earlier, software. Get ready for the software expenses, including for me, ConvertKit for email marketing, and I use Podia for running my online courses. I use Squarespace for running my website, etc. So you can see a full list of what I call my business essentials toolkit in the as one of the links in the description below. Check it out. Over the years, I try to condense them down to only what's essential. And yeah, I think that's really it. There's a lot more to learn, but just realize that give yourself some time, have some patience. It's actually a really fun road, even if you choose to work with a accountant or someone or an attorney to prepare all the fancy stuff for your own business, LLC, knowing that there's so much under your control that you can do and you can learn like I did is actually very liberating. So thanks again. I do have something I want to share with you. For any of you who are watching this thinking, okay, I'm not in my 20s or 30s. I have the actual golden handcuffs. I've done really well. I have a video I would like to share with you from my colleague and dear friend, Michael Leckie. It's about how to make the most of your current situation. So I'm going to bring him on. This is a video. I was hoping that you could really join me live right now, but since he's not here, I will play this video on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And I'm gonna just hop off a little bit sooner on Instagram. But if you're watching on Instagram right now, simply go to my profile. In my profile bio link, you're gonna see immediately there's a link that takes you to all the YouTube live stream content. And the first one at the top is gonna be day 4 for the conversation we have right now. So, all right. Okay, so for everyone else who is still with me, let me bring
the
on.
question of how to take make the most of what your situation currently is before you kind of take the leap is a great one. And let's be clear, it's very context and in many ways country dependent, depending on what the healthcare situation is in the place in the country that you live and work, and depending kind of about the financial markets and the financial stability in the place in which you work. But you want to think about some fairly basic things. You want to be able to afford to, live, have a place to live, hopefully, have food to live on, and be able to take care of your health needs and your family. Now, you may have to reset some of your expectations or be willing to risk those expectations to do that. So I live and work in the United States of America. I live here. I primarily work here. I do some work overseas, less since COVID because I'm traveling less, although I do have international clients. But for me, I had to look at a couple of things. One I had to look at was healthcare. So when I decided to make this move, one of the things I investigated is what kind of continuation benefits, or as they call it, COBRA here in the United States, could I get from the company I was at, and would that help me, easily bridge my healthcare benefits into a place where I could learn enough about how to get my own? Because my humble opinion, and I think probably factual too, getting healthcare in the United States is not so easy. It's a bit challenging and awkward, and it depends upon a lot of different factors. Another thing that I had to look at was what was I willing to give up? I was paying a mortgage on a home in the state that I lived in at the time, Connecticut, which was not inexpensive. And so I had to go back and be able to sit down with my wife, my partner, and everything and say, hey, I'm not sure when I'll be able to make the kind of money to guarantee we can be here. Are you willing to live somewhere else, live somewhere cheaper, give up some of the things that we have currently in our lifestyle, as it were, that we might need to sacrifice in the short term or even in the long term for me to try and do this? So I would say that kind of the simplest things to think about is, first of all, are you covered for how you can take care of health for you and your family, whatever configuration that may be? Is your family, whoever's involved with that, on board and understanding of what you're doing and what the potential risks are? And then the third piece is probably about finances. Do you have enough to bridge you for however long it may take? Or more importantly, are you willing to live with less? Have you figured out how you can do that?
All right, that was it. So I hope you find it helpful. I did leave a link called Learn More from Michael Leckie, and check out his free course, actually only for a limited time only, called The Leap. And there's so many modules and videos that he and I co-created, and we had a great time even during post-production. It was just so revealing and helpful, and I love his energy. He has a great voice for it all. So please check it out, and I'll see you tomorrow back here everywhere that you're currently on at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or noon PST, and we'll be talking about health insurance. I'm going to open up the tables to help you understand some of the dry but necessary things. I'll try to make it as interesting as possible. As always, thank you so much for tuning in. If you could share this with one person you love and care about, that would help me greatly. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.